Goto was pacified, and Joss set off on an important voyage on special orders from General Alcock. One man the general couldn't order was Jervis, who all the same was dutifully tearing apart Britain's enemies and ensuring those who survived would never dare to question the Empire. George Hook faced a close call when Japanese spears were thrust upon his lifeguards, but he escaped to celebrate his continued victories. He and all the British only needed to survive until a decisive blow against the Japanese could be made. For now then, the main advance was occurring on Shikoku. I am very happy with what you have done, Major.
Thank you, my lord. It's all been a nice bit of fun.
Good, good, that is wonderful to hear. But remember, this is not just for your amusement. We need this island. It doesn't have to be in one piece, but a few military bases would be ideal.
You'll have all the bases, ports, and willing volunteers you can dream of, my lord. Don't worry.
I'm not worried, I just wanted to check up on my little boy.
Oh, come on. I'm fine.
Excellent. Some of my associates said that you would not be of any use to us, as they wanted...
They wanted my spine.
Yes, exactly. But you have proven them all wrong, and as I can tell by your charming necklace, they probably couldn't have taken it anyway. So you can just carry on. We'll get this mess under proper control soon enough. It's time for more Honourable Gentlemen. Jervis's most recent battle didn't really bring out anything particularly interesting. We had a quick shootout with an enemy line and we won in the end, suffice to say, even outflanking them to totally destroy the enemy as they tried to reform to face us and wasted time not shooting at us. It was really a one-sided thing. In the end, I just got bored and charged with all of my cav and the enemy mass routed in the face of this. I think Jervis's unit himself also has a ability to inflict dread from his level ups. I'm not sure if he has it at this point in the campaign. He does very soon, at least. So there's the win. Very good numbers, and the result of that is that the road heading north towards more Yamauchi castles is open, or it will be open once we've killed those survivors there, but Jervis will not have any problem taking down some survivors, that's his forte. There's another enemy army in front of us, but it looks particularly poor. It's got loads of matchlock troops for some reason, so I doubt that will be an issue. I had enough movement points to actually go and take the first of the castles up here in that very same turn, so that's going to nicely humiliate the enemy and give us a good reward for being super aggressive in our push here. Now we'll be able to replenish a little bit as well, which will be handy since that army is a little bit damaged, and we'll just let the enemy react to our incursion. Far away, we get a battle with the Kanazawa, but it's a particularly easy one as it turns out. You may remember I was trying to force something big to happen here by having Lawrence and Dorian just stack up in front of this huge pile of enemy armies, but one of them came out on its own to challenge us, not getting a very good balance bar because it's outnumbered, so we'll just get rid of it with an auto-resolve. That's going to be the end of those guys, but it's not the end of the Kanazawa's plan. Later in their turn, they do pretty much the same thing, sending another army with a small backup force this time, so slightly better, but that backup force is in bad condition, and overall, they've got pretty much just as bad chances now as they had before. They could have attacked with both armies at once, and usually the AI does work out to do that, but in this case, it didn't bother. It also sometimes coordinates with its allies. It could have attacked alongside the Kuwana. Not sure what causes the AI to do or to not do that, but in this case the Kanazawa wanted to act on their own and they're failing because of it. Now we actually got a proper battle. They attacked us with a force that has equality due to our army being really beaten up. This led to a very long and technical battle because the enemy decided to use defensive AI, meaning I could either wait until the timer ran out and I'd automatically win, or I could try to play with them a bit to force something to happen. I used some infantry to draw out all of the enemy's wooden cannon fire into a mountainside. Then there was a long and protracted battle over some nearby high ground, fighting with the flank of the enemy's army, and finally, just as the time limit was running out, I just came at them with our whole line and started blasting away, and we were able to to win the ensuing line battle quite easily. I'm skipping over all of this very rapidly because the game actually crashed right after the battle, and I was so annoyed after doing that really long fight that I just said let's retreat and see what happens, and the answer was nothing happens, we just skip the battle. So we'll probably come back to that situation later. For now we'll check in with Charles, who's still doing pretty well capturing the Noto Peninsula, not really facing any resistance. There is this army behind our lines. I've got some stuff nearby to potentially deal with it. We're very limited in terms of what we can recruit here, so we can't quickly raise a new army to stop it properly, but all these recruits who've been wandering up from various places may be able to face them down. Now back to Lawrence. He's taking out some survivors from the auto-resolves against the Kanazawa, just so they don't go and regroup. And now we'll just stack everyone up again, get everyone close together, besiege the castle to try and bait the enemy into attacking us with everything they have nearby. There's still 3 or so stacks in the vicinity, 4 really, and 6 if you count the other guys who are probably in movement range. We'll see what the enemy do with that opportunity we're giving them. Now George Hook, down to the south, isn't going to do anything on this battlefront. I'm going to stop advancing entirely here and take our main army over to the coast, because as I mentioned in a previous episode, I want him to very soon link up with Joss to go on an all-important mission.
The plan's been finalised. A fleet is on its way to that Sake place to take you on to the area of operations.
What about Colonel Arton, sir?
He'll be there by the time you arrive, so you'll have to see what kind of mess he's created and sort it out for me.
But I assume that's not the primary objective?
No. Our aim is to make use of the intelligence provided by Charles as to the enemy's weak point. You see, the Eastern Japanese support this despot who goes by the name of Tokugawa. His base of operations is here, at Edo Castle. Kill him, or capture his capital, and the spirit of the enemy will be washed away. So Charles insists.
I see. I hope he is right then, sir. However, I am somewhat afeard of my role in this, sir.
Afeard? That is a very candid thing to admit to me, Colonel.
I admit it because it concerns a private matter. While I am away, if London was to come calling, I wonder what would happen to my business.
Nothing at all. You have my word. Consider me a steward of such operations until you return, vouchsafed by our mutual interest in the matter.
And there is something else that will help us there.
The area around Edo is rumoured to be host to French outposts. Were these outposts to be removed, the leverage I would gain with London may allow certain privileges to be enjoyed without further ado.
With all due respect, I would consider war with France to be a great deal of ado, sir.
Then make it snappy, and tell everyone who asks that the Japanese did it. Obviously, that means you must leave no survivors.
The Kanazawa haven't learned their lesson, they try this one again, so another easy auto-resolve. Although now that they've done this so many times without us having left to replenish troops, we are getting weak because we take losses in these battles, and now we're starting to drift down towards like half strength. Maybe the enemy can exploit this, but they're losing a lot of men to get us to this situation. They could have done that much more efficiently. Now a battle occurred over with Charles. Looks like he's going to have to defend against a reinforcement army and the army he had under siege, while the enemy has the advantage because they're attacking in 2 groups and we have artillery. The AI of the first group will be aggroed onto us, so they'll just charge at us right at the start. We're going to be blowing them apart with said artillery. We're still suffering from that glitch where the artillery targets the guy on the end of the unit and does much less damage than it's meant to. I think these howitzers just have that glitch built into them because it always seems to happen. That's a shame. Anyway, the first army really performed poorly. They walked up to our line, walking way closer than they needed to start firing, so taking extra losses. And then you see here they've got a group of ninjas that just wants to stand in front of us. Their plan is to throw grenades, and they do manage to get a few off, but standing in front of a firing line while they did that wasn't the best plan, and they're all killed very quickly, along with the rest of their army. Then the second group came in, and for this part of the fight I decided to try the first person camera and see what things look like from the point of view of our men, and they can't really see anything as the conclusion. They're firing at these little dots in the distance that are obscured by smoke and grass, but once you zoom out to the larger picture of what all that random firing does, it's a destroyed enemy army that we see. They got wiped out, and really we didn't take very much damage at all. As expected, the AI just performed very poorly in this battle. There was a better way to do it, suffice to say. We're able to take the castle as a result of our win as well, because the enemy's besieged force was completely wiped out. So good work to Charles there. Now we've got another nice defensive position. Over with Jervis, the Yamauchi have moved an army past us, but I'm just going to ignore it and move right on to attack this castle. Even though it means that army that went past us could come back and take the castle I was in previously, this is still a good trade, because the town we just took is much more valuable and important than the one we're leaving behind. We discover another army off to the left there, and I considered going for the vassalship option for a bit so I could go away immediately and go after the other armies, but then I thought we probably don't need to, we'll just sit there. A Wakayama army has breached our defensive line near Kyoto because I abandoned it to be more aggressive, so now I'm having to readjust my forces to make sure they can't do too much damage, and I eventually concluded that we can probably ignore them and just carry on with John Alcock and his armies going on the offensive. I want to take this Wakayama castle because it's in the territory now controlled by the Yodo, who are our vassals at this point, and getting rid of it will make our front lines much cleaner, so that's the goal there, and we'll just hope that Kyoto is fine. We've got lots of armies around the place here that have been building up over time, so really we're pretty strong. After the disappointing efforts of the Kanazawa and the Kawane here to get a good battle going, I finally get one going myself by here attacking with Dorian against this decent enough line infantry army, backed up by absolutely loads of ninja, both mounted and on foot. So now we're going to get the battle we were looking for. We're not using all of our force because I like to be edgy, and we'll see how our damaged armies do in this big battle. The first priority is to link up our volunteer army with our regular army, commanded by Dorian on the left. While they were forming up, there was a bit of action early on though, because the enemy rushed some cavalry to occupy the hill on the battlefield, and I had done the same, so we ended up fighting with the enemy's Yari cavalry, but since I have overwhelming numbers here on our side, we were able to take out that unit, and it was actually the captain of the enemy's army in that unit as well, so that was handy. We were taking fire from the enemy's wooden cannons, so I decided to abandon the hillside and get out of there, but we were pursued by some of the enemy's mounted ninja. To engage them, I sent up our dragoons. I thought we'll just outshoot them, but because we're both shooting at each other through trees, neither side was really taking any damage here. Trees have a much bigger hitbox than it looks like they do, so it actually stops most of the bullets when you try and shoot through trees, and really we just did nothing. Eventually I had to pull back and draw the enemy along with a load of infantry units that came with them to have a little mini battle before things get really started just on our right flank. I don't think I've ever heard a Jap speak English so well, I must say. Thank you, sir. I worked hard to learn as much as I can, and Captain Alcock helped me a lot too. Charles, eh? He's a good egg, I think. Too good for all the mess we're getting into. Do you know Charles very well? I am not sure, sir. We worked together for a while. That is it, really. You must have got to talking. I wonder if you know anything about his opinion on the Alcock Company. He didn't say anything about that, sir. Did he not? Did he not now? He was very interested in Japanese history and books. I was able to show him many things that impressed him and moved him to be quite complimentary. Yes, he likes that sort of thing. Likes things that are different, likes to learn. He's the makings of a fine man. If you do see him again, tell him to steer clear of his father's enterprises. I should like for him to fulfill his potential. Anyway, enough of that. Return to your duties and follow my lead if you can. After a protracted one unit at a time shootout, our right flank was victorious. The 2 or 3 units of volunteers that were carrying on the fight did take heavy losses, but they eliminated several enemy companies in the process and lots of those mounted ninja as well, so that was all well and good. Then action shifted to the other side of the battlefield, where I sent all of my dragoons to charge down the left in order to approach the enemy's artillery. The enemy army, as you can see on the minimap, has disappeared because they've hidden all of it in the forest where the hill is, meaning their artillery is unguarded. Our dragoons can rush in and take out the enemy crews with ease, but their artillery was split into 2 groups, so after taking down that first group, we rushed across the map going for the second one, delayed by forests and by the enemy's earthworks, and taking a fair amount of cannon fire, doing lots of damage with all of our units kind of clustered together like this. The cannons can do these little mini shots to hit you even when you're quite close. Anyway, we get there eventually and take out those crews as well. Then, for some reason, a couple more units decided to emerge from the woods to continue the battle on our right flank, and even though our volunteer units here are quite damaged, we're still able to repel the enemy, not only through shooting, but by using our cavalry as a distraction. I'm just running them around over there, and the enemy keep turning to face them, wanting to engage them, and then turning back to face our firing line, and all the while they're just wasting time. We're still getting shots on them while they're changing their lines formation, and that's going to allow us to win without much trouble. The replay dies after that, which is annoying because now the main part of the fight is actually going to start. I need to advance and attack this forested hill, which is really the worst thing you can do. It's very slow because, as already mentioned, the trees block shots, so both sides will be firing at each other and not really doing anything. Plus it's harder to shoot uphill, you get your line of sight blocked all the time by various things and mounds that you end up sitting behind. So it was going to be a slow slog. One thing I could do to make things a bit faster is a rear attack with my dragoons. While the enemy were focused on shooting me, I snuck up behind them to shoot through less trees, fewer trees, in order to perhaps get more damage going there. Not sure how much damage that did in the end. So my regulars are attacking the south side of the hill while the volunteers focus on the east side. In both cases they're going to face heavy resistance, but in particular the enemy's melee troops and their ninja were coming down the east slope, so the volunteers were in big trouble. They have no ability whatsoever to resist attacks such as this. All I can do is try to fold backwards and allow the sacrifice of some companies to allow others to get shots into the melee to bring down the ninja. Before I can even order this company to fall back from the melee, almost all of them were dead. We did not last very long at all. Meanwhile, the attack with the regulars is going okay, just exchanging shots across the forest here and probably not doing much to either side. My strategy to deal with the situation is to just advance and try to get the gunfight to happen at closer range so that some progress might actually be made. More melee attacks continue to impact the volunteers. We defeated the first unit that came at us, but then more simply charge out of hiding to continue the fight. My cav were able to kite away a few of the enemy's melee units, so that made life a lot easier for those volunteers in particular. It's really up to the regulars to destroy the enemy at range, since our volunteers are now going to be very much locked down. So we just kept phasing up, getting closer and closer to the enemy and unleashing volley after volley, while the volunteers slowly disappeared to the enemy's continued melee attacks. At least it meant the enemy's melee troops were being worn down, because they could just as easily charge into our regulars and do pretty much the same amount of damage, but at least they're attacking a unit that's replaceable. Very much the philosophy of using a Japanese volunteer army here after all. Thanks to them, we dealt with the worst of it and formed a big L shape to fire at the targets on top of the hill from multiple directions. I did need to fall back in a few cases because of a few more melee units still going wild. I'm going to use my revolver cav to try and bring them down. We can draw the enemy into chasing our units away, then our revolver cav can just sneak shots at the very small number of enemy troops remaining there, and if the enemy do get too close, we can easily run away, so that's a handy strategy. A few more samurai charged out towards the end to attack my regulars, but with the enemy's army in disarray, they can't last for long. Their morale just breaks and we get away without any major losses there. our cav are coming in for a rear attack, but we don't really need it. There's just a couple of line infantry units left up there, and they'll rout once we get men into position to shoot at them. A decisive victory is what we get eventually, with most of the fighting happening out of view somewhere in the forest, but we can rest assured that the enemy were defeated. The losses on our side were pretty tall, between a third and half of our men dead, and in the volunteer army things look pretty nasty. Many units lost, and many units on the verge of being lost if another fight was to take place. And maybe one will take place, because we haven't resolved the situation with that victory. The siege is still going there, and there are still multiple enemy armies left, and now we're really battered. We're not in good condition to continue fighting. However, I want to continue this siege anyway. We're very much going for a what does it take to stop us approach with this attack. And indeed what we can actually do is do a little bit of rearranging of our men here to get a force together that can attack the castle via a night attack in order to potentially get some replenishment for at least one of the armies at the end of the turn, as long as the night attack is successful. I feel a great deal of pressure all of a sudden, Father, but I am confident my advice was sound. The Shogun is very unlikely to surrender, but if his voice can be silenced and his authority shattered, the order of the remaining Japanese families will be compromised significantly. I believe wholeheartedly that our men will achieve this. Now I must ask you to listen to me once more. Soon the fighting will be over, and Japan will become the property of the Crown. I know that you will have much influence over how exactly this territory is administered and how its people are treated. Let me remind you that the Japanese have a dignity that is not altogether different from our own, and that those who have fought for the Empire have exceeded everything we expected of them by leaps and bounds, and that consequentially our possession of this country can be easily thought of as a partnership. Don't let them treat it like some backwater desert island. There is too much for us here, just as we have much for them. Please, do what you can, Father. By swapping units around and merging some together, I was able to put a pretty decent army up for this battle in the end. Our strategy is to use our howitzers and our captured wooden cannons as well to damage the walls, open the gates up and kill the enemies inside. I took the eastern part of the castle because it was undefended, and from there was able to shoot at these ninja who were guarding the wall. The AIs put them garrisoned into the wall because technically they're a ranged unit, but their range is very low, so we can safely shoot them, and even though they are in cover, the sheer volume of fire we're putting on them will allow us to defeat this unit actually pretty fast. Surprisingly fast. Our guys were quite accurate as it turned out. I'm going to do something similar on the other side of the castle, where we're just sniping riflemen away from the wall. We can stand slightly out of their range and still fire, making our approach to the walls eventually a bit safer. It's annoying to micromanage it, but we're not going to lose any men doing this. Later on, a lot of the enemy's ranged units inside the castle came to garrison the eastern wall, and suddenly there was a shootout right here. But because they're above me, both of my lines of infantry here can fire, and using Neil fire allows us to get like 6 lines of infantry all firing at once. And the enemy are just wiped out instantly, even with that cover to protect them. It's not enough, we've just got too much stuff shooting. So we'll be able to clear that wall out again, and that makes life for our attack on the other side of the castle easier as well. Now we need to somehow get in safely. This is the challenge, because climbing over the walls into an area that's full of ninja and other ranged units will be very dangerous for our ranged only troops. But thanks to incidents with the enemy opening the gates and getting shot, and doing things like this, it will be a bit easier. Here I'm using my wooden cannon crew to just hang out in the gatehouse and bait the enemy to coming outside. Once they do, chasing my weak crew, they'll find that actually we've got half the army standing out here ready to gun them down. And they're not going to go back, they commit to the run, and there we go, that's one enemy unit removed. So I just wanted to do that a few times to make things easier for ourselves, but I messed it up because I was sitting here on triple speed, not realising I'd ordered my cannon crew to go back inside, and they ended up actually fighting with some of the enemy's ninjas. Not very nice, ordered them to run away, and surprisingly they actually did get away. The ninjas didn't pursue, means we don't get a chance to shoot them, but oh well, we still shot a few of them there just through the gatehouse, but they don't come outside. Later on in the fight I ended up moving all of that line inside this section of the castle because the enemy just abandoned it. and then we got into a nice cycle that I've seen before, where the enemy keep charging out to retake this part of the castle, routing and then going back into the interior, but in the interior they can't rout, so they stop routing and come back out. In theory, this will allow us to gradually kill everything in their army if they keep sending units out. Our men were being very passive, they didn't really want to fire their weapons and almost had to fight with these ninjas as a result. They routed though just in time. And then we didn't get to see the rest of the fight because we got Shogun 2'd. There we go. I was enraged, got back to this point and just auto-resolved the fight instead since I thought we would win. We got a Pyrrhic victory, a couple of units lost, and I thought that was okay. That probably would have happened actually trying to make a melee assault on the castle against ninja units with our riflemen, so I'll take that result. We'll take the castle as well, and now we'll be able to get replenishment on Lauren's and Dorian's army for that matter, and we'll have a defensive position to help us fight the remaining enemy armies with the scraps of an army we have left right here. So all went well in the end. That's it for this episode. Thank you very much for watching, and a special thanks to the Officially Devin patrons. We'll have to go hunting for the French, and the Japanese will make something of a comeback in the next episode of Honourable Gentlemen.